Discourse on the Origin and Foundations of Inequality Among Men. It is of man that I have to speak, and the question I am examining indicates to me that I'm going to be speaking to men. For such questions are not proposed by those who are afraid to honor the truth. I will therefore confidently defend the cause of humanity before the wise men who invite me to do so, and I will not be displeased with myself if I make myself worthy of my subject and my judges. I conceive of two kinds of inequality in the human species, one that I call natural or physical, because it is established by nature and consists in the difference of age, health, bodily strength, and qualities of mind or soul. The other may be called moral or political inequality because it depends on a kind of convention and is established or at least authorized by the consent of men. This latter type of inequality consists in the different privileges enjoyed by some at the expense of others, such as being richer, more honored, more powerful than they, or even causing themselves to be obeyed by them. There is no point in asking what the source of natural inequality is, because the answer would be found enunciated in the simple definition of the word. There is still less of a point in asking whether there would not be some essential connection between the two inequalities, for that would amount to asking whether those who command are necessarily better than those who obey, and whether strength of body or mind, wisdom or virtue, are always found in the same individuals in proportion to power or wealth. Perhaps this is a good question for slaves to discuss within earshot of their masters, but it is not suitable for reasonable and free men who seek the truth. Precisely what, then, is the subject of this discourse? To mark in the development of things the moment when right taken the place of violence, nature was subjected to the law, to explain the sequence of wonders by which the strong could resolve to serve the weak, and the people to buy imaginary repose at the price of real felicity. The philosophers who have examined the foundations of society have all felt the necessity of returning to the state of nature, but none of them have reached it. Some have not hesitated to ascribe to man in that the state the notion of just and unjust without bothering to show that he had to have that notion, or even that it was useful to him. Others have spoken of the natural right that everyone has to preserve what belongs to him without explaining what they mean by belonging. Others started out by giving authority to the stronger over the weak and immediately brought about government without giving it any thought to the time that had to pass before the meaning of the words authority and government could exist among men. Finally, all of them speaking continually of need, greed, avarice, oppression, desires, and pride have transferred to the state of nature the ideas they themselves acquired in society. They spoke about savage man, and it was civilized man they depicted. It did not even occur to most of our philosophers to doubt that the state of nature had existed, even though it is evident from reading the Holy Scriptures that the first man, having received enlightenment and precepts immediately from God, was not himself in that state. And if we give the writings of Moses the credence that every Christian owes them, we must deny that even before the flood, men were ever in the pure state of nature unless they had fallen back into it because of some extraordinary event, a paradox that is quite awkward to defend and utterly impossible to prove. Let us, therefore, begin by putting aside all the facts, for they have no bearing on the question. The investigations that may be undertaken concerning this subject should not be taken for historical truths, but only for hypothetical and conditional reasonings, better suited to shedding light on the nature of things than on pointing out their true origin, like those our physicists make every day with regard to the formation of the world. Religion commands us to believe that since God himself drew men out out of the state of nature, they are unequal because he wanted them to be so. But it does not forbid us to form conjectures drawn solely from the nature of man and the beings that surround him concerning what the human race could have become if it had been left to itself. That is what I am asked, and what I propose to examine in this discourse. Since my subject concerns man in general, I will attempt to speak in terms that suit all nations, or rather, forgetting times and places in order to think only of the men to whom I am speaking. I will imagine I am in the Lyceum in Athens, reciting the lessons of my masters, having men like Plato and Xenocrates for my judges, and the human race for my audience. Oh man, whatever country you may be from, whatever your opinions may be, listen, here is your history, as I have thought to read it, not in the books of your fellow men who are liars, but in nature, which never lies. Everything that comes from nature will be true. There will be nothing false except what I have unintentionally added. The times about which I am going to speak are quite remote. How much you have changed from what you were. It is, as it were, the life of your species that I am about to describe to you according to the qualities you have received, which your education and your habits have been able to corrupt, but have been unable to destroy. There is, I feel, an age at which an individual man would want to stop. You will seek the age at which you would want your species to have stopped, dissatisfied with your present state for reasons that portend even greater grounds for dissatisfaction for your unhappy posterity. Perhaps you would like to be able to go backward in time. This thought should be a hymn in praise of your first ancestors, a critique of your contemporaries, and should strike dread into those who have the unhappiness of living after you. That's the end of the introduction. Now, part one, however important it may be. Guess we'll do that later. Janjak Rousseau.